With all due respect, welcome back. We're discussing the question of integrity, and I have the best panel in studio to get through these matters. And before we took the break, the question was, who exactly should we blame? And we've gone down the room, and we've realized that there's a lot to blame and exactly no one else to blame in these questions that we have. But let's start with this question of, currently, we have all these politicians. Start with the list, the 241 list that EACC provided. What was the clarity on that? You provide a list. You asked IBC to sort of, bar these people from office. IBC said, this is not our job. Whose job is it?
Okay, James, the Constitution, under Chapter 6 of the Constitution, empowers EACC to implement the provisions relating to leadership and integrity. So it is in the exercise of that mandate as the custodian of that chapter that provides for integrity that we undertook vetting. We undertook integrity verification of all the aspirants who are seeking elections with a view to ensuring that those who will be allowed to assume state office are persons who meet the integrity threshold under the law. Of course, no single entity can implement the Constitution on its own, so we work in a collaboration with IEBC. So IEBC, which may not have the information that we have regarding the integrity status of these aspirants, wrote to us. We had over 21,000 names. IEBC received from us a list of 241 persons who we flagged out based on the database that we have on the integrity profiles of individuals. In our view as EACC, these individuals fell short of the ethical threshold that is prescribed under the Constitution. Again, IEBC is the one with the mandate to determine who is eligible and who is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, we left that to IEBC to act in accordance.
If I remember correctly, IEBC said, you have no business with this. Wasn't that the position of IEBC?
Well, Smart, let me state the correct position of IEBC. IEBC is the body that conducts elections, solely mandated to conduct elections. But as my friend Ngumbia said, it cannot operate in isolation. It has to collaborate with line agencies and institutions. But that does not mean that it then cedes its constitutional independence. Because as a constitutional commission, under Article 249 of the Constitution, IEBC, just like other constitutional, Chapter 15 constitutional commissions, is not subject to the direction or authority of any person or entity. In the interest of enforcing Chapter 6 of the Constitution, the Commission partnered with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. The Commission also partnered with the Commission for University Education and also the Office of the Attorney General. The purpose of partnering with the Office of the Attorney General was to share the list of aspirants, 21,863 to be specific, in order to get representations from the Office of the Attorney General on persons who have been adjudged bankrupt, because such persons then stand disqualified as candidates. With the Commission for University Education, the sharing was intended to enable the Commission for University Education assess the persons who would then appear before it for recognition and equation of their degrees, that is, persons who have studied outside Kenya, for the position of governor, deputy governor, president, and deputy president. The commission shared that list with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in order to get representations on the moral, educational, and integrity qualifications of persons who are seeking to contest as candidates. The commission received a total of 241 records of persons who, in the opinion of EACC, fell short of the prescriptions of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And as I mentioned under Article 249, that the Commission is independent, the Commission then sieved through the list, appreciated the work done by EACC, but then determined, based on the constitutional provisions, based on statutory provisions, that is the Elections Act and the regulations, and also based on judicial determinations, that this category or this group of persons do not qualify, but this group of persons qualify. And I'll, at an opportune time, take you through the various categories.
So help me understand.
The Commission, yes.
So you went, let's take with the list of the 241 with EACC. They
Yes.
gave you, as you said, the intention was for them to supply with information,
Yes,
right? They supplied
Yes.
with information.
correct.
Then you went ahead and said that information is not useful to you.
Not at all, Mark. Not at all.
That's what I'm hearing. That
Not at all. From that list, the Commission disqualified certain persons.
How many did you qualify from the 241?
We disqualified 2 persons who fell short of the educational qualifications. We disqualified 1 person who had been convicted by the courts but had not pursued an active appeal. We also disqualified 2 persons who had been removed from public office on account of abuse of office charges. And you know, under the provisions of Article 75, which is self-effecting and has no qualifications whatsoever or no exceptions whatsoever, any person who has been removed from or dismissed from public office is disqualified forever from contesting
Okay.
in an election.
We'll get to that. But
Yes.
that's 5 out of 241.
Yes.
The rest are fine.
The rest are fine in terms of the provisions of the Constitution.
Help me here, Sheila.
No, I want to dispute my friend Chris. In terms of one, the issue about, yes, we know IEBC is an independent commission, and of course it's allowed to operate. We expect it to be operate independently, but also EACC is also provided for in the Constitution. So when you say that, you know, that we are not, you know, compelled to act on what EACC has provided with us because we are independent, but EACC is also provided for in the Constitution. If you go to Article 79, the Constitution actually requires a commission that will be responsible for compliance and enforcement of Chapter 6.
Okay.
Is that IEBC or EACC? Because in that case, then we'd expect that what comes out of this process of verification, we receive the list of candidates, I think Eric has said about 21,000, then the word from EACC should be final that according to them, because they are the custodian of Chapter 6, they're the ones responsible for issues around in investigations into corruption, and they have that information, they hold that information, it's under their custody, issues around ethics, so they're best placed to tell us, these people have issues. And once word comes from EACC, then it should be final that this is, you know, when they communicate to IEBC, and it's not even infringing on their independence, it is because EACC, that is their expertise. You know, the same way KRA is responsible for issues on taxation, and we expect that, then IEBC would not come and tell us, no, you know, but if KRA has said these issues on tax, has disputed and has raised this issue around tax compliance or so on of an individual, then you don't expect then IEBC to come and, you know, say with its own opinion, and yet they are not the tax experts. So EACC is the expert in terms of ethics and anti-corruption.
So IEBC should cede ground to EACC on questions of integrity.
In terms of their advice, whatever the recommendation comes from EACC, we expect that that is final, because if it says, as per the reading of our Constitution, you know, and maybe just to also go back to what Chris has said, that from out of the 5, so we have now the balance is what, 236 or so, that according to them then, when you read the Constitution, and I think he's talking about Article 99 and 193, 193. But what about other articles of the Constitution, like 73.2, which requires selection on the basis of integrity? And the same Article 99, if you look at Article 99 1B, which requires that someone has to meet 199B and 193B, requires that someone has to meet certain moral and ethical requirements. How are we considering that? And why are we going straight to Article 99 to say, yes, they have issues, but you know they've not exhausted all appeal mechanisms,
right,
so they're allowed to vie. But what about those other provisions? How important are they in terms of ensuring that we then get clean leadership? So my appeal really is that we need to undertake a holistic reading of the Constitution, because if we just box ourselves to Article 99 and 193, we will be stuck in terms of implementation of Chapter 6. We need to look at it holistically in terms of the same Constitution which requires us to apply ethical and moral standards.
Crispin, would you accept that? Because as it is now,
Yes.
it appears the only defense is that IBC says we are just independent and we will make decisions because we're independent. And everyone else is supposed to suggest to us and then we make the final decision. That doesn't appear like a very high threshold.
Smart, that is not true.
But that's what you've said.
That's not the only defense. The
This matter can
defense
add
is
yeah?
the constitutional
Okay,
provision.
just continue. Let me
Okay.
make his point and then you come back to you.
Okay.
The defense is the constitutional provisions. If you look at the provisions, and I'm not a defender of persons who lack integrity,
I did not say you
because
are.
my position is that if any person presents himself as a candidate or an
Yeah.
aspirant, and he falls short of the constitutional provisions on moral, educational, and ethical standards, then he should not be cleared to contest as a candidate. My issue is on the provisions of Article 99 and the provisions of Article 193 that provide the grounds of qualifications and disqualifications of a candidate. And knowing that the Commission conducts elections, those are the articles that then guide the Commission in determining whether a person is qualified or not.
Help me understand this.
Yes.
So what is then the point of you asking for this information, say from EACC and information from CUE, information from anyone else, if at the end of the day, those are constitutional commissions, right? Then you're going to have the final. What's the point? Then do the whole investigation from the beginning. You don't have that
The
expertise,
point-
right?
Yes, we do not have as such. But the point is, we need to get representations. You see, from the list of 241, we managed to disqualify certain persons.
5.
5 because of the provisions of Article 50, SMART.
Okay.
Article 50 provides that one is innocent until proven guilty, and the Commission respects the rule of law. If the Commission acts in a manner that falls foul of the Constitution, the Commission will be on the dock.
So you're suggesting EACC does not respect
Yes,
the rule of law?
EACC respects.
Okay, let me hear from
James,
EACC, yes.
Yes.
I think the biggest problem that we have as a country and even as institutions charged with this mandate is the narrow interpretation that we have given to these provisions. Because if you look at the spirit of the entire Constitution, that is when you read the Constitution holistically and in a harmonious approach, you will realize that Kenyans intended that state offices are only held by persons who can command public confidence and respect. And again, talking about the presumption of innocence, you will realize that we have individuals who have been convicted. In our view, when an individual is convicted, you remain condemned. If you have an appeal, all you have is a right of appeal. That right of appeal does not restore the laws of presumption of innocence. So presumption of innocence no longer applies the moment you are convicted. So in our view, people such as those ones do not meet that very high integrity threshold. And again, we are happy that for the first time, these matters have been taken to court, because when we have a challenge such as the one that we have, where the suspects are interpreting the law differently, IEBC looking at it differently, EACC looking at it differently, when we have that state of affairs, it is the court that has the final authority. So we are happy that the court is now considering matters that will probably guide the country so that it is clear what the integrity threshold is. And let me mention something that is very important here. You know, when you talk about electing into office somebody who has integrity, it means a lot. Citizens ought to know that once in every 5 years, you constitute a government, you send individuals to manage your affairs, including your resources. So the kind of people that you put in office to manage public affairs ought to be people who have integrity and who will only serve public interest. Let me give the characteristics of a person who has no integrity and what they do when you elect them to office. From the experience that we have, because we have dealt with individuals who were accused and actually flagged out for not meeting ethical requirements, and somehow they ended up in parliament and other offices. What such a person would do, number one, if you are corrupt and you're having a case, you cannot be expected to make strong laws that will drive the anti-corruption agenda. That individual will take any opportunity available to them to frustrate any process that is aimed at holding them to account. Number three, that individual, because most of them are in decision-making opportunities, that individual will not exercise effective oversight. And the worst of it is that if this is an individual who is at a very high level, right, very high position, they will lack the moral authority to even question those in their troops that are engaging in corruption. So it means a lot to elect people who have integrity, and the citizens must know that if we don't do that, we are the ones who bear the consequences of bad governance. Okay. So before I let you go, individuals who are corrupt, and I say this without prejudice to the matters that are before the court, people who have been pointed out as having been found by competent fact-fighting institutions, that's fact-finding institutions, having found them to have fallen short of the requirements under the law, those are individuals who ought to clear their names first before they come back to seek office.
All right. With all due respect, there's a lot to chime in, and especially the question, when did the rain start beating us? But most important, what is that threshold for integrity and the epidemic of fake degrees and all those coming up? Taking a short break. When you come back, I'll have plenty more of this, with all due respect.
We are who we are, beautifully African.
Whatever we are doing now is going to reflect in the future.
We thank those who came before us, and we pave a path for those who come after. We keep walking.
Biggest odds in the world every day on selected matches. Make a decision. Mozart Bet.
So, he's the one falling for you? Is it because you guys go for drinks and cook each other Spanish omelets?
Oh, so you know about the omelets. Is that what has your bile all up there today, Annie?
Not here to ask you for anything. And you don't deserve anything from me.
I'm the mother of your children.
Which is unfortunate.
For every 349,000 that you deposit or pay as installment towards any of Optivent's plot of land, you get 10K cash back instantly. Kamata ploti na 349K. Call us on 0790 300 300.
All right, with all due respect, welcome back. Now, to the most important question, what is that threshold for integrity in this country? And where are we at the moment? And exactly when did the rain start beating us? Sheila, let me start with you. What is the threshold for integrity in this country? And what is that moral question that we should all be answering?
I mean, the moral threshold, the ethical and moral threshold is very well set in Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and it requires that we select our leadership on the basis of personal integrity, competence, and suitability, But then, of course, in that Article 73 to what I must add is, of course, parliamentarians sneaked in or election in a free and fair election, which then means that you forget about the first part, that someone should, demonstrate personal integrity and competence, and then replace that with or free and fair elections. But I think, yeah, those are, as Eric said, that a politician who does not have good moral standing will give you bad laws and will not implement. And I think you have to relate this to our whole struggle in regard to the fight against corruption.
But citizens vote for, I mean, so fine, let's assume.
Yeah, but even before, James, just maybe, before we even get to citizens, there's something that even as institutions, we put in place institutions to help us with the implementation of we charge them, we mandate them with the implementation of this constitution. Before we even get to citizens, what is that role that institutions are supposed to play to ensure that basic tenets, principles of the Constitution are actually implemented as per the letter and spirit of the law? Yeah, I think for a long time we know now we're struggling with these issues around the citizens, and for me it will take a lot, and we have to go back to issues around our cultural context and practices, but before we dismantle that, it's something we have to get to. But we already have a constitution. We have set provided in this constitution institutions, independent institutions, and even other offices to ensure that this constitution is implemented in its full letter and spirit. But what have they done to ensure that it's actually done?
But from where you sit, as an arbiters, I think all these institutions that we charge to do all this, are they speaking together? What should happen essentially to make EACC, IEBC, and everyone else to sort of speak in one voice? Well, as it is now, it appears it's very independent, like in the function of independence.
Yeah, and we respect that for all purposes. They must remain independent, because we also don't want them to be infiltrated or influenced by the executive, because we know that can happen. We have seen that happen before. So we must maintain that independence. But there's a way in which, like I was listening to Chris saying that they collaborated with EACC and got this, they shared that the names of the 21,000 plus names, and then got this list from EACC. They collaborated with the Commission of University Education and the Attorney General's office. But I think as he was talking, it just hit me. Yes, they collaborated and got that information, but just look at the issues we're struggling with right now in regard to clearance of candidates. They've talked about collaborating with the Commission of University Education, but maybe Chris can tell us, if that collaboration was really worthwhile, would we be having the issues that we're having, where right now, left, right, center, you open Twitter and everyone is talking about this politician gave us a fake certificate, there are all claims of this, and there are all these. We even had presidential candidates who came, they didn't have, the requisite certificate, academic certificates. But then there's a question, then I have a question about this collaboration. Maybe that's something that they need to look at, this framework within which they're working together as institutions. Because, for Kenyans, as we have charged you with that mandate, taxpayers' resources are going to support these institutions, and then this is the third election under the Constitution. I still call it new because a lot of the provisions still remain unimplemented. The third election, and we're still struggling with basic implementation of certain things. So it means that I think our institutions have to go back and just find what framework can we use to actually deal with this issue, not wait for another election and then say, oh, Article 99 has locked us and tied us up, our hands are tied. We actually expect these institutions, you need to work for us. You need to work for us. And the other thing that we expect is courage and boldness from these institutions. You see, like Chris was saying, that if they do certain things, like he talked about Article 50, fair hearing, and yes, and we agree, everyone who has been accused of something has a right to be heard. But then, even as you're heard, and we are not saying that that just because you've been accused that you're then guilty. But then public office is such it's a very, it's a sanctified place. You're going to oversee resources, you're going to manage billions of resources of public funds, of belonging to the public. How do you entrust this to someone who has a question mark in regard to their character and integrity? And as much as we say, yes, you have the right to fair hearing, but can you clear yourself first and then offer yourself for leadership? That was really the spirit of Chapter 6. It was just borrowing from good practice and what we do out here, James. that if I stole a chicken, and you know where we come from, we like chickens, you will not give me any.
It's a high crime.
Yes, it's a high crime. You will not give me.
chicken.
You will not give me any responsibility. You will not let me anywhere near your office or your house because you know that I have stolen something. But then these are people who have stolen billions of shillings. But then you want to entrust them with more billions. And when you look at some of the cases, in fact, I was looking at the list that EFCC presented, the 106 names presented in 2017. Now it has doubled to 241.
Yeah.
It is the same names, in fact, the same names which appear, yeah, and with different cases, meaning that they got into office and got opportunities to commit other crimes. And some not even just stealing, but looting. Actually, yes, looting, stealing,
it's no longer stealing,
some murder,
looting.
some killing, some are accused of killing. But then we are giving them that opportunity because we are saying, hey, let's give them the fair hearing and whatever, and that's fine. But can we just say that give them the fair hearing, they have their day in court, but as they clear their cases, let us excuse them from public office. That was really, for me, the spirit of Chapter 6.
Yeah. But James, before we leave the point that she has advanced, one thing that we cannot fail to accept is that there is an apparent conflict in the Constitution, where on one hand it provides for these appellate provisions, and on the other hand we have Article 10 that requires that every person making a decision involving interpretation of the Constitution must be bound and must comply with the values that are listed there. And one of them is good governance. So for us as institutions, we have to be guided by those provisions and Article 10. And most importantly, if we are to resolve the conflict in the Constitution, then it has to be resolved in favor of public interest. Because what is happening now is that we appear to put a lot of emphasis on the rights of the individuals to run for office. And we forget the public interest in a corrupt-free country. And if you look at the damage that corruption has done to this country, you will realize that there is a compelling need to have people of integrity in the office. So let us interpret the Constitution in a manner that promotes good governance. Let us resolve any conflict in a manner that favors the people. And that is what, in our view, IEBC could have done. So that instead of interpreting the Constitution in a way that favors what the aspirant is saying, you would rather leave them to go to court to justify why they should be on the ballot.
Okay.
So that if the court says that a murderer can be in the ballot, then we take it.
Can I just add a little fire there?
Yeah, he needs more time to respond. Yeah,
yeah, because Chris is, well, because he had said that they don't want to end up in the dock. But Chris, we are supporting you as taxpayers. So it is not IBC going with Chris's or Chebukati's personal resources. No, it is with taxpayers' resources, you know. And that is why we are asking, our institutions need to be bold and courageous and act for the public interest. If they take you to court, go to court. We are supporting you as Kenyans.
Yeah.
You know, it is not your personal resources, it is our resources as a public.
Can you be a bit bold?
Yes, indeed, the Commission is bold. And that's why it has taken action against certain individuals. But there must be a balance between that boldness and acting within the province of the law.
And according to
the Constitution requires the Commission to abide by the law, the Constitution and the law. If the Commission were to take the bold move that Sheila suggests, it must be a move that is backed by the law.
But it is. The Constitution is there.
Public interest.
Smart Constitution. My position is this. My position is this. Yes, my position is this.
Yeah.
That if you read this Constitution, the first article talks about the sovereignty of the people. And it goes ahead to say that that sovereignty is delegated to Parliament, delegated to the executive, and delegated to the judiciary and independent tribunals.
Yes.
So in having a discussion around enforcing Chapter 6, the entire heap of blame should not be placed on the Commission, because the Commission operates within a framework of the law. What has Parliament done, for instance, to give effect to Chapter 6.
So Parliament has failed. We can agree on that.
I can say without any fear of contradiction that it has failed.
Yeah.
It has failed because it watered down the provisions, the initial provisions of the Leadership and Integrity Act. So what we have under Section 12 of the Leadership and Integrity Act in respect to persons seeking election is a mere self-declaration form that the candidate fills, and EACC is only required to stamp. Can you return such a person? Can the commission say that you have integrity questions and therefore you should stand disqualified? There was a proposal that was made in the year 2014, around 2014, the post-election era, post-2013, that a certificate be provided under the Leadership and Integrity Act of clearing these candidates. That certificate be then enacted in the Elections Act to then enable the commission be guided under the provisions on qualifications and disqualifications. But going back to Article 1, the people have a responsibility when it comes to enforcing Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
These are voters now.
These leaders come from the society. The society knows that this person is tainted. They have an opportunity, even if these persons are presented as candidates, they have an opportunity at the ballot to reject such persons. But what do we see? They appreciate those persons who have baggage, those persons who, in the public court, are in breach of Chapter 6. So it's a responsibility that must be spread and that covers the entire country, the entire citizenry.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's run down with the question of the people, you know, the responsibility of citizens.
Yes. James and team, one of the things that we must appreciate is that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 places Wanjiku, or the citizen, at the center of the management of our affairs. So Wanjiku cannot afford to sit back and also expect that institutions will work on their own. The Constitution envisages delegation, but not surrender. What citizens have done is actually to surrender that sovereignty to politicians. And I take the view that...
we trusted you in the institutions that you will at least, you know, help us and guide us.
What should happen is that upon delegation of the sovereign authority, the citizen must remain vigilant and continuously monitor how that power is being exercised. So we are still where we were pre-2010, where the challenges that we intended to address through the new constitution are still there. It is because the citizen has largely not even realized the powerful position that they hold under the constitution. So one of the things that the citizens must do is to realize that they have a responsibility in governance, because we have a civic responsibility crisis in this country. They take up their responsibilities. They avoid you know, some of the things that we see. Sometimes I see them dancing outside there when we summon somebody to come and record a statement. So someone who has stolen billions of shillings from your money is being called to account, but citizens are there standing in support. So we have to admit that our moral fabric as a nation is shattered, and for us to repair that, everyone has to do their bit. So citizens also have to elect persons of integrity. The people who are giving us problems do not come from elsewhere. They don't come from Uganda or some other country. These are our brothers, our sisters, people we know. And now that the governance cycle is about to lapse in a few days' time, there are people who will be ridiculed back at their homes for not having accumulated too much. So it appears to me that when citizens elect somebody, they have an expectation that this is an individual we have sent there to go and loot for us and then bring back so that we share. So to the credit of politicians, citizens ought to stop expecting money from politicians. Nobody goes around, you know, distributing their salary all over. Because when you expect them to give you money, what will happen? They will get the opportunity to go to the office. Then what they will do is to steal your own resources that are meant for your health, roads and development to recover that. So for us to get out of this quagmire, we have to recognize that on 9th August, a critical opportunity comes for us to constitute a government that will manage our affairs for 5 years. If we don't get it right, then we have to prepare to experience 5 years of pain. And the other thing, and this is very disturbing, I don't know how the youths of this country take it when somebody comes and they seek to buy your soul, your future, at a cost of 100 shillings. You know, somebody gives you 500, then you give them your vote when they are not suitable. So that's an individual who has undermined you. So we need to feel bad about it. The way you feel bad when a thief steals your phone, that is how we expect everyone to feel bad when public resources are stolen. So we have to begin appreciating that these resources don't belong to government, which we sometimes see as some entity elsewhere. They are our resources as citizens, and the moment we begin to associate ourselves with the challenges that arise from corruption, perhaps at the time we need to start doing something about it. So I finalize that point by saying that the people of Kenya, and I say this without any fear of contradiction, have largely contributed to the national challenges that we face today. The government cannot do everything. The government can only go up to a certain extent. Citizens must take up their responsibilities, and that is how we are going to realize the values and ideals enshrined in the Constitution.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, I think just picking up from Eric, from what he says, I think one step that we have to go a step ahead, even if it's going to be after the elections, and not take a pause on this matter around voter education, and particularly the whole aspect about cultural change, behavior change.
Right.
Because it's clear that we need that if someone has stolen, and I mean, I've had comments that even these guys who are being accused of presenting fake certificates, that they're actually becoming more popular on the ground.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a red flag. You know, and really we need to start getting into minds of ordinary Kenyans. You know, what makes them wired in this way? Why would they find this person so popular or appealing? But there's a whole question around seriously looking into behavior change in this country from an individual to an institutional level. But all the same, I think in the next 2 months, though I think before we even go to citizens, we are still also looking up to the judiciary. Of course, there are all these petitions that are in court, and we are hoping that the judiciary can help us, you know, in terms of giving us that direction of how do we proceed and what do we do with people who have been charged with corruption, convicted, and so on. Because in our minds, for me, those people should not be anywhere near the ballot. But if all else fails, because our political parties have failed us, Parliament has failed us, Chris wants to fail us, Eric and ESCC have tried, but again, you know, that has not worked. Or I don't know, we'll see what is the outcome of this. But if all else fails, of course, we are asking citizens, please make the right decision and reject anyone who has an issue, because anyone who has an issue will not act in the public interest. They are there in office to preserve themselves and ensure that they continue to escape the law and create conditions for them to continue escaping the law while still reaping from the public.
All right. Now, the story is about fake degrees and completed academic records, university records that cannot be found, has dominated this election cycle, pretty much like the rest of other election cycles. Now, I'm not bothered so much about the degree in itself. Whether one has it or not, it really is not a measure of leadership. It is a standard we agreed and we put out in law, and therefore one must have it to qualify to get the ballot. Now, what bothers me, it is the lies around those being questioned. Now, the moving of goalposts and sneering at the questions by the political elite. This is a leadership and moral question. In the book, Finite and Infinite by James Cass, the cunning politicians plays finite games. That's games of here and now for their own individual benefit. The leader, however, plays the infinite game. That is about future generations. They think of their actions, the society, and the communal well-being. The folks faking degrees and dancing around the question recognize that the current political state of play is a finite game theory. It is about me, myself, and I. Anything can be bought, manipulated, and explained away, they say. But here's the thing and a fact that there is a credible pushback tells us that the system is not as open to lack of principles to the levels our political class think it is. members of both sides of the political divide are facing the firing squad on this one. So there is no favoritism, if you like, and discrimination somehow. Once again, that constitution is fighting back at the least likely moment. The cult of leadership has been determining the process, but now principle is slowly seeping into the system. With all due respect, thank you very much to Crispin from IEBC, Karibu Sana. Please come again and again. Eric, Karibu Sana. And of course, Sheila, thank you all. With all respect, yes. Do have a lovely night.
This is NTV.